Would you like some interesting information about how the SQE2 assessment is marked? If so, stay tuned for the next episode of SQETV.
If you wanna be solicitors, why don't you come and visit us at SQETV?
When will the SRA publish comparative pass rate data between different SQE providers? It's a question I'm getting increasingly asked, but unfortunately we still don't know precisely when we'll get this information. Just to give you some context, in 2023 the SRA promised that they'd provide us with some comparative data. By the end of that year it never happened. They deferred it until 2024, which is where we're now at, but no date in 2024 has yet been promised. I'm recording this in the spring of 2024. They say that when they do publish the comparative data, it'll be based on who the candidates nominate as their primary SQE provider. So that's great when it gets published, but until then, you're going to have to rely on the data that the providers are giving to students from surveys they do of their students. And what's interesting is that only a very small minority of providers are actually quoting any pass rate data at all. It's absolutely scandalous, and there might be one or two that are quoting pass rates that are really cherry picked, that need to be scrutinised in a lot of detail because they're not genuine statistics for the whole of the cohort that sat that exam. So do scrutinise the pass rate claims for those that publish, and do ask the providers who are not publishing pass rate data for SQE, why on earth are you not doing so? You surely know your grades for your students. Indeed, some of them embed the SQE results in their actual awards they award students, so they will know them, but they're not publishing. Tells me they're not happy with their pass rates. If they're not happy with them, their future students shouldn't be either.
SQETV.
I often get asked, what is the pass mark for SQE2? And the simple answer to that question is that there is no fixed pass mark. And the reason for that, if you think about it, is quite obvious. There are 16 mini assessments that make up SQE2, and there are multiple sittings of SQE2 in any SQE2 window. And that means inevitably there's going to be some variation in the relative difficulty that some students have in their journey compared to others. And therefore there's a moderation process that takes place by the examiners to make sure that even if the pass mark isn't consistent, the level that you need to pass is, and therefore you do get some variation. And if you look at the table in front of you, if you look at the last 4 windows where you could sit SQE2, the pass mark's been amazingly consistent, either 61 or 62%. I think we can look at the very first sitting of SQE2 as a bit of an outlier, but I think going forward you can expect the pass mark to probably be in the early 60s.
SQETV.
So how does the SRA arrive at their marks for each station? Well, the first thing to say is that each station, remember there are 16 stations in all, is marked out of 5. And you're given, for most of the stations, a skill score, and you're given a separate legal knowledge score. And what happens is the score for your station is the average of the skill and the knowledge. So you might get, say, 3 for your knowledge, 5 for the skills, and therefore your mark for that station will be 4, which is the average of the 2 marks. But there are exceptions, and let me show you the guidance that the SRA have published to illustrate this.
SQETV.
What you can see in front of you now is the SRA's really helpful guide to how each of the stations are marked, and 14 of the stations are marked in the way I've described just a moment ago. So those written stations you can see: case and matter, legal drafting, legal research, legal writing, and the oral station of advocacy. Exactly 50% of the score is the skill and 50% of the score is for the legal knowledge, and then you take that average, as I've said before, and that gives you the station score. It's slightly different for mixed stations. So there are 2 stations there that involve interviewing and attendance. That is an attendance note that you normally do after an interview with a client, and it's slightly more complicated there, mainly because when it comes to interviewing, you're interviewed by a member of the public who can just mark you on the skills that you're delivering. They won't be assessing you on the legal knowledge, where the knowledge you'll be assessed in relation to that interview will be in the follow-up attendance note. So that's why we've got a slightly different formula, but it ends up being an average of the skills and the legal score, but just calculated in a slightly different way.
SQETV.
Why is the pass rate for SQE2 so much higher than SQE1? Remember, the SQE1 pass rate has been ranging from the very early 50s to the mid 50s at best, whereas the SQE2 pass rate in the very last hit in October 2023 was in the 60s, but actually for every other pass rate it's been in the 70s and even tipped into the 80s, 82% for first time sitters in the July 2023 SQE2 sit. So why is there such a discrepancy? Well, the simple answer to that question is the vast majority of people who sit SQE2 have to have passed SQE1 first, and therefore the level of candidate, the calibre of candidate is going to be much higher on average for SQE2.
SQETV.
So that's the end of part 1 of the SQE2 results FAQs. Hope you enjoyed it. There's lots more to come in part 2, where we'll be looking at the unique position of LPC graduates who are exempt from SQE1 but they need to take SQE2. We'll look at what concerns them, and we'll look at people who maybe decide to separate their SQE1 and SQE2 studies and look at how you choose an SQE2 provider. So lots more to come in those FAQs, as well as many more videos to come on all things SQE. Please do like and subscribe to the channel. Remember, our videos drop every week. We love it when you subscribe, and if you do tick the notification bell, what will happen is you'll be notified as soon as our videos drop. And as we always do when we close an SQETV video, we now say it's time for the jingle!
If you wanna